call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Sue Ashton. Heidi Bassford Kirkhoff.
Here.
Claude Benedict.
Here.
Lurton Blassingame.
Here.
Ron Durkop.
Here.
Sandy Kleckel.
Here.
Julie Maslowski.
Here.
Judy Ritchie.
Here.
Deb Allison Asby. Here. Jean Mullerman.
Here.
Okay, we'll go with the approval of the December minutes. Last month, we don't have official minutes, so we'll go back to December. We had several corrections that were identified earlier. Does anyone have anything to add, subtract, or change in the minutes that you received the other day? If not, I'll have a motion to approve.
So move it. Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Citizen statements. Kyle, do you have something?
Hi, I'm Kyle King. I'm from Mercy Gero Psych. Just a quick update on the unit. We continue to grow. Our census is increasing. We're nearing our capacity of 8 beds. We continue to plan with our expansion. That should be starting the next 2 to 3 weeks. So hopefully by July 1st, we'll be up to 15 beds. So again, that construction is going to start in about 2 to 3 weeks. It won't affect, for the most part, it's not going to affect our bed capacity. There will be a couple shutdowns in the rooms as we replace some fixtures like the toilets, and but again, it's fairly minimal. So that's kind of our big project that's coming up next. So.
Great.
Thank you. And Erin for the Health Department?
Yep, I'm from the Health Department. I just wanted to share that we do have a new evidence-based class that's going to be starting April 2nd in Oshkosh. It's called Healthy Living with Chronic Pain. And it's designed to kind of help people that have chronic pain learn to cope and increase their confidence and minimize the effects of pain. So I just have information on that I can pass around. Also, flu season isn't over, so keep washing your hands.
Julie knows.
Thank you. And I'd also like to officially welcome Heidi. She was just appointed to finish out Peggy's term. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving forward, and I have asked Erin and Kyle to sit at the table with us. The subject that's being discussed today is elder rights, and they've been through both programs dealing with a lot of those issues, the same as we see in the community. So our speaker today is Christina Ebbett with the Elder Rights Project. And Christina, the podium, and she has a PowerPoint presentation she's doing also.
Okay. Is this good for volume?
Yes.
All right. So you all have handouts in front of you. You can follow along, but I'll also have it on the screen for you as well. I also provided you with some of our pamphlets as well. So as Judy said, my name is Christina Ebbett. I'm an attorney with Legal Action of Wisconsin. I work with our Elder Rights Project. I do work out of our Oshkosh office here, but we have several other offices around the state as well. Today I'm just going to talk to you about elder abuse generally, give you some definitions, and talk about how to spot signs of elder abuse and how to refer people to our project as well. My contact information is on the front screen there, but you also have it in your materials as well. Okay, so I'll give you a little overview of the presentation today. First, I'll discuss the prevalence of elder abuse, give you some statistics that we've collected about how common elder abuse is. Then we'll move on to some definitions. This can get a little dry, so I apologize. It's a lot of legalese, but if you really enjoy reading statutes, maybe you'll get a kick out of it. I'll talk about the warning signs of elder abuse so that maybe you can take that back to the community and help educate other people about how to maybe spot whether or not someone might be dealing with a difficult situation. And then finally, we'll talk about my Elder Rights Project and the eligibility for it and how you can make referrals to it. And I should say throughout the presentation, I encourage people to just kind of chime in if you have questions. I don't mind interruptions. I actually kind of enjoy them. So I like the conversational style presentation a little better. So you could help me out if you do interrupt me. So elder abuse has been known as kind of a hidden epidemic. The reason for that is that it does affect a lot of people, but it gets reported very rarely. So about 10% of people 60 or older are affected by elder abuse, and 50% of people with dementia are affected by elder abuse. I'll talk a little bit about that later, but I think you can tell that maybe some people with dementia might be more vulnerable. They may be more victimized by people who are likely to abuse other people. And in as few as 1 in 23 cases are reported, and even fewer are prosecuted. So reporting is really a large issue in this area. I think that's because mostly the victim themselves really has to be the one to report it, or is the most likely one to report it, and victims don't want to report that they're being abused for multiple reasons. A lot of people are embarrassed that they've been taken advantage of or abused. Sometimes it's a close family member or friend, so they don't want to get that person in trouble. There's a lot of other reasons, but you can imagine that it is really difficult if you are a victim of any sort of abuse to really step up and report that yourself. So I think, that it really kind of falls on the hands of third parties, friends, family members, other people, to sort of spot this and report it, or try to talk to the victim themselves to have them kind of recognize that they might be in a situation where they are being abused. And then I'm not a prosecutor, so I can't speak to the prosecution statistics, but I do think that there are many reasons why prosecuting these crimes are difficult. Sometimes there's just a lack of evidence. Sometimes, again, the victims don't really want to come forward and participate, so it can be difficult, I think, for prosecutors as well in certain cases. However, elder abuse does have very dire consequences. It can cause premature death and increase hospitalizations. It's been reported that there are about $5.3 billion in healthcare costs as a result of elder abuse. And generally, it can lead to a loss of wealth to individuals or entire families, businesses, and the Medicaid and Medicare system. So why do abusers target older adults? Some of the reasons are that some older adults can become lonely, isolated, or dependent on others. As we age, we may become more dependent on other people in our family or our friend circle. Some older adults experience cognitive decline. Like I said, about 50% of older adults who are abused are suffering from dementia. So that's a big cause of abuse there. Older adults tend to have a more regular, steady income, either from retirement benefits or Social Security benefits. This could cause them to be targeted because there's a pot of money there that comes every month that maybe their friend or family member knows about and decides to try to target. Older adults tend to have accumulated more assets than younger adults. They can be more trusting or polite. I think that really gets reflected in the increase of these scams, the phone calls, where people are afraid to hang up. They don't want to be rude. They don't want to say no. So that can really lead to a lot of those segues into those scams. Someone might be vulnerable due to grief, maybe the loss of a loved one or a close family member. Kind of along with that, there can be a lack of experience with financial matters. I see this more often with, a partner or spouse who has lost their spouse or partner, and that spouse or partner was the one who handled all the finances. And they're now gone, and the person who is left has never seen a phone bill, has never looked at their bank transaction record. So when they get bombarded with all of these bills all of a sudden and hit with all of these financial papers, they really don't know what they're looking at. They really don't know what to do with them, and that creates a situation where they actually do need help, but then they might seek help from the wrong person. So that can really be a difficult situation for someone. And then some people have loved ones who have money problems, who have AODA issues or drug addiction issues, or who have mental health issues that cause some sort of abuse there, because if your adult child or your niece or nephew has money issues and is struggling, or has a drug addiction and is desperate, they may target you as someone that they could try to get money from and abuse eventually. Okay, so here we go with the definition. So elder abuse is defined as someone who is 60 or older, who has experienced, is currently experiencing, or is at risk of experiencing abuse, neglect, financial exploitation, or self-neglect, which is not actually a crime, but it is a form of abuse that falls within the definition of elder abuse. So there are several different types of abuse. There's physical abuse, which means intentional or reckless infliction of physical pain, injury, illness, or impairment of any physical condition. There's also sexual abuse, which includes 1st to 4th degree sexual assault, which also includes sexual contact without consent. Emotional abuse, we do see this quite often. That's actually language or behavior that does not serve a legitimate purpose and is intended to be intimidating, humiliating, threatening, frightening, or otherwise harassing, and that does actually or reasonably could cause that result. Moving along, there's also treatment of consent falls within abuse. That's administering medication or performing psychosurgery, electroconvulsive therapy, or experimental research, something like that, without informed consent or lawful authority to do so. Unreasonable confinement or restraint is also a form of abuse. That is intentional and unreasonable confinement of an individual in a locked room, so basically locking someone away and confining them to a room or a small space. Involuntary separation of an individual from his or her living area, so kicking them out of their home, kicking them out of their living space. Using restraining devices on an individual to keep them in one space and not allow them to move. And then also the provision of unnecessary or excessive medication on an individual, basically not for a lawful purpose, but to basically confine them with the medication, make it so that they can't move and go about their daily lives. Now we can move on to neglect. The definition of neglect is a failure of a caregiver to endeavor to secure, maintain adequate care, services, or supervision for an individual, which actually creates a significant risk to the individual's physical or mental health. So it's really the failure to provide services that are necessary, and it also creates this significant risk to their health. Now, a caregiver, it's important to note that a caregiver does not have to be a licensed professional. It can be someone who has assumed the responsibility for all or a portion of a person's care. It could be voluntarily, by contract, by a verbal contract, or by any sort of agreement where someone is just claiming to act as a caregiver. Financial exploitation, I would say this is probably the biggest area of abuse that we see in my office, and probably the biggest area that we've seen in our project as a whole. The technical definition is obtaining or receiving for less than fair market value a person's money, property, or belongings by either deception, coercion, or force, abuse of financial authority, use of personal identification, which is also known as identity theft, or forgery of signatures and documents. Now, within this, you can see the issue of manufactured consent. This gets a little technical, but it's basically obtaining property by either deception, coercion, enticing that person, forcing that person to do so, and results really in a lack of informed consent or undue influence, and that's the kind of situation that creates a manufactured consent situation. So basically it looks like someone, on the face of it may look like someone consented to that act, but once you dig into the facts a little more, you realize that they were really coerced into doing so. So that's the sort of financial abuse we see through manufactured consent. Some examples of this are if a mother gives her house to her daughter, and the daughter promises to care for the mother for life. Once that deed's signed and the daughter gets the house, guess what? She's not going to give that care. She kicks mom out of the house. She mortgages the house for money so she can get a little extra cash. And so that's really manufactured consent because the mother really relied on that promise of the daughter to care for her in order to do that deed exchange. Another one that we see actually more frequently than you might think is this love con situation where maybe a much younger woman starts dating an older, maybe cognitively disabled man. But she gets him to pay her rent, utilities, cell phone. Maybe she gets him to give her a car, other things. And so this gentleman is relying on her, on this relationship, thinking that she's going to care for him, that she's going to be his companion and give him attention. And really, she's just using it to get money and property out of him. A third example is when a stepfather allows his daughter to move in temporarily. She may bring several other people in the home. She might refuse to leave. She's basically taking over the entire premises. And maybe she promised at the beginning that she was going to pay some rent or utilities, and she's not doing so. So that's another manufactured consent situation where this stepfather relied on his daughter's promises that, maybe this was just for a month or two. She wasn't going to bring anyone else into the house. She was going to pay some money towards this living, and none of that happens. And now he's stuck with a tricky situation. We see this quite often, actually.
Christina, does
Yes.
the victim have very much recourse in those situations once it's come to light as to what's happened?
Yes, they do. So that third example where someone allows someone to move into their home and then basically they can't get rid of them. Mm-hmm. They do have some recourse. There's a couple of civil legal remedies that we can pursue there. Usually we're looking at either if there's more abuse and the client's okay with it, we might look into a restraining order. That would effectively remove that person from the household. But the other remedy that we might look into is evicting the person from that premises.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so abuse of financial authority is also a form of financial exploitation. This is a substantial failure or neglect of a fiscal agent to fulfill his or her responsibilities. So it involves fiscal agents here. A fiscal agent includes either a power of attorney for property or finances, maybe a representative payee or a conservator or a guardian of the estate, someone who's assuming some sort of financial authority and they're abusing that financial authority. Here's some pretty common examples of that. They all involve power of attorney for finances, I realize that, but there are other, it could be anyone who has financial authority over the person. So the first one is a granddaughter might use her authority under a power of attorney for finances to transfer 2 deeds into her name and take $30,000 from the savings account. Another one might be the power of attorney cashes in his aunt's stock and uses the proceeds to put a down payment on a summer home up north. Wouldn't that be nice? Another one is a power of attorney might take money from the elder's account and use it to pay his own bills and buy things for himself rather than the elder. So that financial authority really isn't for, on that last one, I think that's telling because I think sometimes people can get that confused. If you're a power of attorney for finances, you have a duty and an obligation to use those finances only for the benefit of the person who's the principal under that power of attorney. So you're not allowed to just pay yourself, give yourself a little on the side. You really have to use it for the benefit of the person who's needing that assistance. Okay, we can move on to identity theft. I'm sure you've all heard of this. This is the unauthorized use of someone's personal information or documents to obtain something of value. This can be the use of credit or debit cards, opening new credit or debit cards with someone else's information, opening utility accounts with someone else's information. I've seen this happen before, or taking out payday or other installment loans with someone else's information. This and manufacturer consent are what scam artists use to scam people most often. So when you get those phone calls and people are looking for your personal information, they're going to use it for identity theft in order to, open a credit card or take out loans or do something like that. The manufacturer consent, I think, also is employed by scammers because they may make a promise saying, we can reduce your debt or we can lower your interest rates. But you have to pay us $2,000 to do so. And then you give them your credit card information, and instead of $2,000, $10,000 is charged to your account. And also, they didn't do what they said they were going to do. There's no reduction of debt. There's no reduction of the interest rate. There's only, more debt for you to pay.
People who say, "Oh, I'm from Microsoft and you have a problem with your computer.
Right.
Please do this, that, the other, and press R," and then you're in trouble.
Sure, that's another one. Yeah. Those can be very tricky. So some other examples of identity theft that would be a little more personal than the scams are son might take a mom's credit card from her purse and just use it without her permission to buy things. That's pretty simple. Or might take the credit card application from the mailbox, fill it out, and use it to get their own credit card under mom's name. Or a grandson might use grandpa's personal information to electronically co-sign on his student loan. I have seen this happen. I think it will happen more and more in the future as student loans become signable over the internet. You can just kind of put your initials in the computer and hit "I verify this," and then you have a loan. So I think that might happen more and more. There aren't a lot of secure measures for determining whether that's actually that person's identity and whether that transaction is valid. So I think that will come up more often. Forgery, I'm sure you've all heard of as well. This is falsely making or altering any writing with intent to defraud. So basically just signing someone else's signature. Examples could be that maybe an elderly woman gives her roommate her purse for safekeeping if she's going into the hospital and she can't hold on to it herself. Then that person writes several checks to themselves, by getting her access to her checkbook. Or a niece might forge an aunt's signature on a quitclaim deed, transferring ownership of the property to herself. So there are many, many important documents that can be forged, and you have to watch out for that.
I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
You got to be a forgery expert to find out how many your names. Like somebody takes my name and writes my name to prove that I read it and I didn't write it. I mean, there's got a lot of people out there that can do that.
It depends. Sometimes you can prove it just by comparing your usual signature to the signature that's on there. But other times, if it's close enough or there's some debate over it, you will have to call in an expert to verify that was a forgery.
Thank you.
Sure.
Christine,
Yeah.
we've talked about the property fraud alert that we have available through the Winnebago County Register of Deeds office. Would it be helpful to be registered with that to kind of prevent this type of
So
abuse?
if you could explain a little bit more about how that works.
Well, you sign up with the Register of Deeds office to be notified whenever there's some action regarding a deed or something being registered in your name.
Okay,
that you're not registering. Obviously, somebody else is doing that.
sure.
That affects your property.
Uh-huh.
And then you get alerted that something is being registered, and then you can take some action, is how
Yeah, I would say that would certainly be helpful.
Yeah.
In protecting yourself against something like that. Yeah, because otherwise, how would you know unless you were looking into your...
It's a free service,
property.
and it's easy to set up. We've
Yeah.
talked about it here before, and we probably will talk about it again a few times.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Okay.
that would be helpful. We can talk about some warning signs of abuse that maybe you can take with you and use in the community. So some of the signs might be injuries, especially unexplained injuries or untreated injuries or repeated injuries. The same bruising on the arm, same arm, or same sort of bruising on the back or something like that might be a sign that someone's being physically abused. If someone's in poor physical condition generally, they might be dehydrated or malnourished. That would certainly be a sign that they were being neglected or abused. If their basic needs are being met, again, that could be a neglect situation. If there's any unusual banking activity, including a sudden transfer of property, like you were discussing, or assets, that would certainly be a sign of abuse. I think banks are getting much better at catching these scenarios earlier. The earlier they catch it, the better, obviously, because that means less money will probably be taken out of the account. The disappearance of financial or legal documents or checkbooks. If the deed to someone's house just disappeared, they had it in a drawer and it's gone, or if your checkbook just goes missing, it might mean that someone took it to use it. Strained or tense relationships and changes in personality or behavior are good indicators that someone's being abused and that they're dealing with something difficult, and it could be an indicator of abuse. And then also withdrawal and isolation. A lot of abusers, especially abusers that have close relationships to their victims, will manipulate the situation to isolate the victim so that the victim doesn't really have a chance to report, or they can't talk to someone else about what's going on. So that isolation is a big sign, especially if they were social and you saw them every day or something like that, and then they just don't want to go out anymore. It's a good sign of abuse. Common characteristics of abusers. We have a lot of examples of family members here, and that's because often, unfortunately, family members are the ones who most often do the abuse. 72.4% of reported abuse cases since 2005 have been some family member. Fiscal agents, like we talked about the power of attorney for finances, that was 18.8% of reported abuse cases since 2007. People who are financially dependent on the elder is 16.22% since 2006. That's, like we were discussing, maybe it's an adult child who's kind of hard on their luck and they've moved back in and now they're financially dependent on the elder individual or their parent. People who are unemployed are 10.5%, and then AODA is 14.3%, and mental illness was 7.6%. So as you can see, those are the top characteristics that we've
Find
seen
these
today.
Changing? How often do you get these statistics?
Well, we don't get them every 6 months or anything like that. So I don't know. I haven't looked recently to see if that's changed at all. We don't do statistical research at our firm, so I'm not exactly sure, but we usually rely on these other agencies to do that research. I think these are from the DHS's annual elder abuse and neglect report, so they do issue one annually.
Christina, regarding the total in terms of financial abuse, I've heard figures anywhere from, this is nationally now, $3 billion a year to like $36 billion a year in terms of financial exploitation. Now that's quite a range.
Right, yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on
I
how prevalent
cannot,
it
off the
is?
top of my head, think of what would account for that, unless there was some sort of limiting characteristic that they were looking at. So maybe they were only looking at financial abuse by a fiscal agent or something like that, that would be on the lower range versus overall financial abuse or overall cost of financial abuse plus every other abuse that would include medical care for a victim. So that's what I can think of that might cause such a wide range if you're looking at different statistics.
Would 35 or 36 billion dollars seem even? I mean, that's a huge, huge number. I mean, is that prevalent in our country?
I think it probably is.
Okay.
I'm not a statistician or a mathematician, so I'm not sure, but
Okay.
but I from what I've heard, it seems like it really is that prevalent throughout. And if you're talking nationally, I would say
Right.
so. Yeah. So now I can go over the Elder Rights Project and a little bit of our history and how you can refer people to us. So we are a statewide collaboration. It includes Legal Action of Wisconsin and Judicare. And Legal Action of Wisconsin was formed in 1968. We serve the 39 southern counties of Wisconsin, so you can see how we break up Wisconsin there on that little map. Judicare was formed in 1966. They serve 33 northern counties and 11 American Indian tribes. And the purpose for both of these agencies is really to provide free civil legal aid to low-income and elderly people. So the Elder Rights Project is funded by the Victims of Crime Act, which was formed in 1984. Its goals are to help victims respond to physical and emotional needs of their victimization, to stabilize their lives, and to help them engage in the understanding and participation of the criminal justice system, and also eventually to provide for their safety. Our funding comes from fees and fines of convicted federal offenders. So here's a fun little graphic for you. You have the offender. It goes through Judge Judy. That's who processes it. Judge Judy imposes a fine on that offender, and it goes to the U.S. Department of Justice, and then it gets to us, the good guys. So the eligibility for our project is that someone must be a Wisconsin resident who is 60 or older. They have to be the victim of crime or elder abuse, and they have to have a civil legal need related to that victimization. Yep, go ahead.
Say that again in other words.
Sure. So someone who is 60 or older who is a Wisconsin resident, and they are a victim of elder abuse, and then because of that abuse, they may have some civil legal remedies available to them from that abuse. So I always tell people, if they're thinking about referring someone, don't worry about that civil legal need part. We'll figure that out. And so really, if someone is 60 or older and is living in Wisconsin and the victim of a crime, we'll look into it and see if there's something we can do for them. So the great thing about this project is that there are no income or asset limits. So if someone is over our general low-income threshold, the Elder Rights Project can still take that case and look into it for that person. And also that there do not have to be any criminal charges pressed or any convictions or even a police report required. So someone doesn't have to be at the stage where they're ready to file a police report or seeking some sort of criminal charges against their abuser. And this is really great for the situations that we see where the abuser is an adult child or a family member or a really good friend, and the victim really doesn't want to get them in trouble with the law. As in law enforcement. So we can still talk to those people, and they might be willing to have us assist them in lieu of going to law enforcement. So there might be remedies that we can do in the civil realm that do not involve prosecution if the person does not want prosecution. So some of the services that we provide are protection orders. So basically restraining orders based on domestic abuse, harassment, or an individual at risk. We handle landlord-tenant matters. As I discussed, we might be able to evict an abuser from a household, or we may be able to defend an eviction if it's related to an abuse. We can review and revoke abusive power of attorneys. We can also try to recover money and property from financial abuse. We do some foreclosure defense. I actually haven't seen a foreclosure case come across my desk, but I think our Milwaukee office has seen some of this. And then identity theft issues. So we do get people who call who have been victims of scams and identity theft, and we have some remedies that we can employ for those people. We also help with public benefits if that's related to the abuse situation. We help with family law members. I've done divorces for individuals who have been abused by their spouses. We can draft some simple advanced planning documents, and also we can give people just information and referrals to collaborating agencies that might be able to further assist them with their issue. There are some things that we can't do just based on our funding restrictions. So this is a list of the services we really just can't provide. Personal injury or tort cases, we do get some phone calls on those, and we can't provide services on those. Criminal cases are left for the DA's office to prosecute, so we do not handle criminal law. And then some other areas are workers' compensation, employment discrimination, immigration, school desegregation cases, or abortion cases. To refer someone to our office, we have a referral form, which I can send to Judy if she wants to distribute that later. We also have an intake line that is listed up here. That is operating, I think, 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's on the materials there, but it's a hotline basically that does intakes, and when you call it, you reach either an attorney or a paralegal. And that attorney or paralegal will do an intake for a potential legal case. It's not really a hotline for advice, so we can't give legal advice over the phone when someone isn't our client. So it really is a hotline for us to do an intake through our system in order to potentially vet that person as a client. And I do have a little map here. It's really hard to see. I cannot get this any bigger, But this just shows, it's not that important, it just shows our different office areas and the regions that we cover. And my Oshkosh office area is in the pink there with my contact information. And this is our hotline number again, in case you didn't get it the first time. And I would open it up to any further questions that you guys may have.
Do you get referrals from the Winnebago County Adult Protective Services Department?
We do.
You do?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Good to know that.
Yeah, we work pretty closely with them. That was one of our first community connections that we reached out to make.
One of the things that I found with Meals on Wheels is that our volunteers going into the home would see things that maybe someone else wouldn't have access to. And there were a number of times over the years that Adult Protective Services, and working with another social worker or whoever, would basically make a very strong recommendation to having the meals delivered as just one more protection for the individual. And it really made a difference in those individuals' lives.
Right, because it provides that meal security, that nutrition, but it also creates that community contact.
And the contact was probably even more important than the meal itself.
Mm-hmm. Right,
Just
so
like
they're
our
not
safety
so
techs, yeah.
isolated. Yeah, that makes sense.
Christina, could you comment more on the volume of activity that you see in your office? I mean, you alone in your office? You have a staff with you, and
Sure. So through Elder Rights Project, I'm the only attorney that serves the Oshkosh counties that were listed on that map. But we do have another attorney who just started 2 weeks ago that is housed in our Oshkosh office, and she's going to be handling our Green Bay service area. So the counties more Brown County, Kewaunee, those counties up there. But yeah, so I mean, I have seen a number of cases come in. I would say the largest volume subject-wise has been family law and with I kind of group restraining orders into family law sometimes, even though it's not always family members. But so basically divorces, restraining orders, and then I see a lot of financial abuse. I see a lot of scams and identity theft, and then sometimes I get some civil claims where like a friend or family member has either abused a power of attorney for finances or has just manipulated someone into giving them money or property or something like that.
Where is your office?
It's actually right over here. It's on the corner of Washington and Main. We're in that big, tall bank building that was in that Johnny
Okay,
Depp
sure.
movie. Yeah. We're on the 7th floor there. Sure.
Have you reached out to those that are like in the investment industry, financial planning and banking? Because I'm in the investment area, and it's interesting because typically, many times you'll see adult children, grandchildren, and what you find out is that the client is, requesting numerous withdrawals from their assets for the very same person. The challenge is most times, when you have the client, there might be, there's usually like a contact, right? But sometimes that contact person is the person who's the funds are being consistently withdrawn for, and there's not other contact information for other relatives or, maybe a third party that would be, somebody that would help provide oversight.
Yeah, so I know that there are initiatives to reach out to the financial industry. I think it can be difficult depending on the bank and depending on the company. I do know that a lot of the area agencies are starting to reach out to them to educate. I think it's more with the local banks and educating them on spotting financial abuse and who to contact if they spot it. The problem with us is that we can't do that kind of oversight unless the person is our client. So we need the client's consent to look into their documents to try to see if something was wrong. So they're not going to ask us to do that unless someone has said there may be something off here. So we do need the client's consent. But I do know that a huge part of that outreach to the financial institutions is having that banker or that financial manager spot something in the account that looks wrong, and taking that to the client or the victim and saying, "Did you mean to do this? Is this right? Because now you never withdrew $1,000 every 2 weeks before, but all of a sudden $1,000 every 2 weeks is coming out of your account. Is that legitimate?" So just having those red flags go up, I think is really important in the financial industry. And I don't personally have a scheme for the best way to reach out, but we have done presentations to banks before. I know that the Adult Protective Services or the ADRC have done some outreach to banks, and I think there's a video that they send to them that kind of tells them how to spot financial abuse and how to contact people if they see it.
I think from like our side, I think what's difficult is, it's the actual client that's withdrawing the funds, but you suspect that there's emotional or manipulation going on, and that's how they're, getting your client to take the funds out despite your best efforts stuff.
Right.
Because if it's family, grandchildren, adult children, makes it a little bit more difficult to.
Yeah, and that's where those community connections are really helpful. So often it's really helpful when someone's going to maybe a smaller bank that they've gone to their entire lives or their entire adult life, and they know the banker or they know the teller there, and that person, they trust that person, and that person can kind of talk to them and sit down with them, and they have that personal relationship. It gets much more difficult when you have like a much larger corporate bank where nobody knows anyone, and Yeah, they're not really spotting it that way. So that's, I think, where those community connections and personal relationships really are helpful.
What other recourse would a financial institution have if the individual had some cognitive issues?
That's tough because I don't know that if there are cognitive issues, I'm not sure what a financial institution has authority to do other than talking to that individual and maybe if that individual comes in with a family member that hopefully isn't abusing them, kind of having that conversation. But I can't think of any authority that they would have to step outside of those bounds and take any other action other than just trying to address it with the client themselves.
Well, my experience was, and it's not within our family or anything, but a lady that was consistently going to one of the local banks, and her accounts kept getting more and more screwed up from what she thought she was doing. And she had some cognitive issues, but it was so out of her norm of confusion. And finally, the bank personnel contacted Adult Protective Services and discovered what was going on, and was able to have some recourse in there. Didn't protect everything, but it put a stop to what was going on.
Another important point, I think, is that referrals can be made to Adult Protective Services anonymously. So
Right.
when there's reluctance to give the name and all that, at least they can talk about the situation and name the person, but ask to be confidential so that they don't
Yeah.
have repercussion. on
And
themselves.
Adult Protective Services has more investigating authority than we do with someone who isn't your client. So, they can do home visits and investigations that way. We really have to get we have to establish that attorney-client relationship in order to start investigating, because we need consent from that person to get the records and to do the digging. And we're doing the legal work, so we're not doing investigations of the home environment or anything like that.
Very helpful, useful. Would you be willing to talk to other groups? I was thinking of the neighborhood associations, meet once a month.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. That'd be great. You can just contact me. You have my contact information, so that would be excellent.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions or comments?
Well, thank you very much.
Excellent.
Yes, thank you for inviting me here.
Okay, moving forward, we'll go with our subcommittee reporting, strengthening our partnership with neighborhood associations and other partners. Lurton?
I will attend the neighborhood meeting on the 19th. I'm working with Pam Reuter to identify city-owned properties that perhaps the neighborhood could use for whatever purposes that they might find in the neighborhood that would be useful. And I will certainly mention to them what we've had since the last time I was there, including the Elder Abuse 101 program. So we're in a regular conduct. I have asked for the email address of the representatives of the neighborhoods, because I haven't gotten much feedback from the contacts I've made so far by going to the once-a-month meetings. And so maybe if I talk to the individual representatives of a particular neighborhood, they might say, yeah, I wasn't going to bring it up at the meeting, or I missed the meeting, but here's something I could do since I'm talking to you on the phone or on email. So it's underway, but not a lot of information to share with you today.
Okay, thank you. Improving access to affordable transportation and delivery services for seniors. We actually did not have a report until I did some digging in the last few days for a couple of individuals in the community. One was applying for a renewal of their ID card, and discovered that along with that, there's another form that you can get that goes with your driver's license when you're applying for a renewal on your driver's license or your ID card that will identify that you have a hidden disability. So if you have an individual with a hearing impairment or other issues, that can be noted right on the driver's license or the ID card. And I'll bring that information in more detail next month. And we already know that there's a visor card that can be put in the vehicle, that if an individual with a hearing impairment is stopped by law enforcement, they can use that card to point out different situations. So sometimes research comes up with things we didn't expect. So that's what ours is.
Judy, another thing related to transportation is that in the governor's
That's right.
proposed budget, he's looking for a 20% increase in funding for county elder and disabled transportation assistance program. So that would increase $3 million each year in of the biennial budget for specialized transportation services. So hopefully that can pass.
Right. Okay. Creating community design and policy that supports an age-friendly community. Jean?
Okay, I'm still continuing to research the 8 domains of livability for the city of Oshkosh. So I know Julie and Deb, if this is a copy for you guys to kind of look at. So my research is still continuing. If anyone else wants to add to the list that's included in that packet, just go ahead and send me some information. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And improve communication and visibility of available services to seniors. Julie, did you have anything?
No, I don't.
Okay, Ron?
Several things here. One is the Wisconsin Energy Assistance Program. It's to help provide assistance for customers paying their winter heating bills, and we know that that's gone up a lot in this particular winter. Eligibility is for people who are over 60, or not over 60, but their last 3 months of income less than $6,870 for an individual, and a family of 2, $8,984. So that program runs between October 1 and May 15th, so people can still apply for a one-time heating assistance grant. There's also help for electric assistance, crisis assistance, as well as winter weatherization program. And the number and the entity to call in Winnebago County is Energy Services Incorporated, and the phone number is 800-506-5596. That's 800-506-5596. And another deadline that's coming up pretty soon is the owner-occupied housing rehabilitation program. It offers a zero-interest deferred payment loan to low-income and moderate-income property owners to do exterior work on their home, roofing, plumbing, electrical, furnaces, painting, general repairs. It's a pretty good program. I've in the past worked with clients who utilize this service. For a household of 1, annual income of $39,850. Family of 2, $45,550. So the deadline is March 15th to apply. That's right here at City Hall in the planning office. And the phone number there is 236-5059. That's 236-5059. And again, March 15th They will not take applications, as I understand it, after that date. So if you need some housing rehab, time to do it. See, a couple others. The senior care, that's the prescription drug assistance program, has been extended through the end of March. The state of Wisconsin is still trying to persuade CMS to give a 10-year extension so they don't have to do this every couple of years. So hopefully that will be passed and approved of. And a new resource that I just learned about yesterday is happening at the Payne. The Payne is excited to begin hosting a free monthly program for people with memory loss and their care partners called SPARK, S-P-A-R-K. Beginning Wednesday, March 27th, SPARK will meet at the Payne from 1 to 2:30 p.m. every last Wednesday of the month, and participants gathering in the studio located in the lower level of the mansion before enjoying activities related to art, gardens, and current events or exhibitions happening at the Payne. And SPARK is a cultural program for people with early to mid-stage memory loss and their care partners. And you do need to register because there's a limited space apparently. And that's going to be every Wednesday, starting with March 27th of this year from 1 to 2:30. It sounds very much like a memory cafe, although they don't use that term in any of the publicity. The contact person is Noelle Dickman, and the phone number there is 920-235-6903, 920-235-6903, and it sounds like a great program for people with memory loss.
And it
their
actually,
caregivers.
it actually sounds like it's something that's in other areas across the country, or at least in the state.
There's a number of museums that are already into that, and it's brand new here, so a new resource.
Could you give the phone number one more time?
Sure, absolutely. And again, that's Noelle Dickman, N-O-E-L-L Dickman, D-I-C-K-M-A-N-N, and the phone number is 920-235-6903. And they do need to register in advance. So, great resource, I think. We're going to cover caring for the caregiver coming up, so.
I do have something to add. On the third and fourth Tuesday of each month, they are now offering respites for those with memory needs at Our Savior Lutheran Church on Wisconsin Street. So I just wanted to share that.
We definitely have lots of things coming up. Also, on Monday, March 18th, is the State of the City over at the Convention Center. Lots of good information that will be there, as well as recognizing boards and commissions members and Mark Roloff's address. Deb, I know you're going to be there. And Ron and I talked with Steve Cummings at the Boards and Commissions meeting. They were looking for some of the committees to also have their information there. So we've agreed to have this group. So we're asking anybody from here who'd like to come that evening and participate. We've got handouts, we've got a poster. Good information, and it's a good opportunity to network with some of our community leaders. The other thing we have, and hopefully they put the poster up, Caring for the Caregiver, caregiving conference on Monday, April 1st. It's covering not only the adult caregivers or care receivers, but with children. It's Monday, April 1st at the Convention Center, and the hours are 9 to 3. They do require registration by March 18th, and the contact is Nancy Reedinger. Phone number is 236-1220. There's also an email address, NRUEDIN GER at co.winnebago.wi.us. Long address. It's free, but you do need to register ahead. So again, we will be there and inviting all of you to come and participate with us. Any other business to come before the group? Deb, any words of wisdom?
Yes. However, I think I would like to maybe perhaps discuss on the next agenda.
Okay, okay, sounds good.
One thing before we stop, I wish we could put more time on Touch a Ride with the Phoenix Corporation. And I think this is,
They will do more for us at a later
Yeah.
date.
get much talking about it. I think that's the goose that laid the golden egg for us.
Well, they will have more for us later.
I know, I know.
Okay. Our speaker next month will be the city attorney, bringing us up to date on all of our rules and regulations and things that we need to be adhering to.
Didn't she come and we have a booklet of that?
She was here once before, but things have changed, and we have a lot of new members, and
Okay.
it's good as a review, as well as an orientation to the newer folks. So, she's very happy to come. She'd rather keep us on the straight and narrow and not mistakes as to have to defend us. Okay, so the next meeting will be April 2nd here at City Hall with the speaker as the city attorney. I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.